All right, ladies and gentlemen, and moguls of all ages, what is happening? It's your boy, the Schwantz27, and I'm here tonight to showcase off the Flashback Battle Royale week number 5, Edgar's Chainsaw from the Coliseum 2. I am joined tonight by Turdsman in the booth. What up, Turdsman? How are we doing?
I am doing great. I'm looking forward to watching this. This is one of my personal favorite flag sets for this set. So this is going to be really exciting. Lots of really tight match this week.
Yeah, I loved the Coliseum 2 event when it was out. There were 14 different flag sets that you could pick from, and actually this is one of the ones that we didn't get to play during the event, so it's nice to see that we actually get to play it for realsies in a different event here. Were you part of the Coliseum 2 way back when?
Yes, yeah, I did get to be a part of this one. I wasn't part of the first Coliseum event, but I did do this one. And it's funny that this didn't end up in the list because I think it's the one that I practiced the most. Is the weird barter seed style kind of threw me off, so I wanted to make sure I got used to that. But I'm sure we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, well, actually, let's just talk about that now. So, Edgar's Chainsaw, right? Last week we did start with Edgar with tools as part of the Madeline flag set. And yes, I'm going to bring it back up because I think everybody wanted to forget it, but I have to drop it. So the interesting thing is we do start with Edgar with tools. And as you mentioned, this is a barter seed. Shops are 100% random, and every 4 items get you 1 item, except in the case of when you have Edgar at the front of your party and you go to the Figaro Castle or the World of Ruin South Figaro, where he gets that kingly discount of 1,000 GP for every item instead of 2,000. So there are no Super Balls and no rods, but at 100% random shops, that means that there could be really, really good stuff in here.
Yeah, and it definitely changes the pathway that you might want to take in the early game too, since you're going to want to get to the Figaro Castle, and South Figaro in the World of Ruin also has that Edgar discount. So if you find a really nice accessory or weapon there, then you can get that sucker for half price.
Yeah, so some of the other interesting things about this flag set, the scaling is going to be a little bit tougher than what we're used to. 2.5 times your character's Esper Dragons for enemy levels and HP. Only 2 times for XP and GP, so maxing out at 50. So this will be a little interesting to see how our runners deal with that increased amount of scaling. We are, however, going to get some buffs to some stats. We automatically get +5 strength and +5 magic power, but if we win a Coliseum match, hence this is a Coliseum flag set after all, we get a plus 10 stat boost across the board. So I'm expecting to see most of our runners go and hit up the Coliseum relatively early in this flag set. And even if there's nothing good in there, Turdsman, you'd still want that stat boost.
Oh yeah, the 120 visible rewards is really handy to try to save a precious 2,000 gold, because the gold scaling from enemies is quite low. It's 1 time, so standard gold drops. So you're not going to be getting a whole lot from the fights unless you find a cat hood or something. So the Coliseum can be a nice way around getting an Illumina or something nasty like that.
Well, speaking of Illuminas, you can set the Zozo clock to go get a high tier item along with 8 tools. I don't anticipate any of our runners going to do that unless we found absolute gutter tier garbage in shops here. Then somebody might get desperate and go do that. The other interesting thing to point out, and we'll see how this affects routing through the seed, is that Kefka Tower skip is at 12 bosses. So you want to tell us kind of what that means in terms of routing?
Yes, so there are a couple different types of checks in the game. There are more standard ones where you go through a little bit of a dungeon and you fight a boss at the end. However, there are a bunch that don't have a boss. Some of them are considered free checks, which in this flag set can still be progression. But some other ones are longer. Phoenix Cave is a good example of a pretty long walk that has no boss at the end of it. So there might be a bit of a change in what our runners might want to go to. The first half of Edgar's Figaro Cave check, for example, has a boss, but the second half does not. So we might see a lot of people eschewing the ancient castle tonight.
Yeah, and also, even though there are 12 bosses for Kefka Tower skip, what we might see is a strategy I think that was employed heavily throughout the Colosseum event, because most of the Colosseum flag sets had that 12 boss skip, where, remember, there are bosses inside of Kefka's Tower, right? So sometimes you might only end up with 9 or 8 bosses, or maybe 10 bosses when you get your unlock final Kefka requirements. So what you could do is you could dive into Kefka's Tower, beat up a couple of bosses in the tower. Let's say maybe you overload one of your parties and just go all the way to the end of that particular line, and you'll get enough bosses to get skip, and then you could warp back into the tower at the statues, having defeated already one of those paths too. So that is something we might see out of our runners as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of little techniques that you can utilize with the boss skips. That's a big one, just overloading the right-hand party and clearing through all those bosses that you'd otherwise have to split everybody up for.
All right, so I think we're going to get started here in just a second. I'm going to press play on all of these videos, and hopefully we'll get off and running here. As we do have 4 runners. We've got Double Down, we've got Papa Shango, we got Judge Joe, and we have Honeydew here. And it looks like we knew we were going to have Edgar, but we also have Mog and Locke. Locke has Capture, Mog has Lure. So we could actually go ahead and steal some things off of enemies in order to flip for other better things as well here.
Yeah, and these are 2 very good characters to have to pair up with Edgar for checks. Locke wants to go to the World of Ruin as fast as possible to open up the weapon shop, as we see Judge Joe here going that way, and maybe checking out the Curse Shield while they're at it, which pairs nicely with Edgar wanting to go to South Figaro. And Mog is just great. You know, you see both Double Dan and Papa Shango up top there activating that Lone Wolf check. We'll see if they decide to do that right away, or if they just want to get that out of the way so they don't accidentally forget it later.
Yeah, so Judge Joe going to go ahead and show us what's in the Narsh weapon shop here, and it is Torado or a Force Armor. Definitely going to want that Esper there. However, Honeydew is questioning people on the Conga line there, so in order to set the Zozo clock, it has been randomized. It is not 6:10:50 as it is in the vanilla game. So what you have to do is you have to get some clues from some NPCs around town, and since there are great people at Zozo, nobody is telling you the truth, so you basically have to write down the list of times they tell you and cross it off. We do see on Papa Shango and Double Down screen, we have some offerings in the Narsh relic shop there.
Yeah, Narsh in general was pretty stacked for good equipment in this seed. It's neat to see Honeydew do this because this is going to be required for this week's Zozo run. So we get to see him blaze through it really quick, and he gets an Illumina. That is incredible find.
That was a little bit of foreshadowing there on our part from what we were talking about earlier.
That was by accident.
Yeah, so we have Double Down over into Returners. Papa Shango, meanwhile, heading to the Figaro Castle. And usually when I have Edgar, I like to do Figaro Castle first and then warp over into the World of Ruin to go to South Figaro Town in order to see exactly what is for sale in cheap shops. That is a ribbon there for the relic shop from Judge Joe. Did you happen to see what the Curse Shield count was?
It was at 9, so not too shabby, honestly. Like, there's no big grind fight character in the party right now for some of those easy fight checks, but 9 is not too shabby. And we see Honeydew going to the Colosseum right away, getting those early guaranteed buffs as soon as they can. Actually, considering they found that Illumina, that's a pretty good idea. You're not really gonna, you're not gonna be too worried about finding another one in the Colosseum if you got the first one already.
Yeah, like I mentioned, even if the items you see in there are trash, you do want those buffs to your characters for sure, especially to offset some of that increased scaling that we were talking about there. Hero rings for sale in the relic shop there of World of Balance, South Figaro. Judge Joe cleaning out World of Ruin, South Figaro, and Papa Shango unfortunately getting a dead check Genji helmet on top of the Figaro throne. Normally that is great to eat your ice cream out of, but in this flag set it only sells for 500, which kind of stinks. I normally like selling that because it's like a $2,000 or, excuse me, $20,000 helmet you could sell, but unfortunately you can't do that in this particular flag set here.
Yeah, it does devalue chests a little bit. It is kind of nice knowing, like, oh, this thing I'm going to find, regardless of if it's a tonic or whatever, it's going to be 1/4 of a good item. But it's still, unfortunate when you find, especially out of a check, when you find something that just doesn't really cut the mustard.
Dr. DT coming in with a 32-month subscription.
Oh,
Thank
wow.
you so much, DT. We do forward your donations through your sub monies on Twitch towards whatever charity marathon it is we're going to be running next. And if I take a look at the calendar here in the Worlds Collide Discord, it looks like we are going to be on Sunday, March 16th, part of the Gamers Against Cancer Marathon. So that is the next charity marathon we'll be taking place in. So we'll happily give your sub donations or bits, cheers, or whatever you do to make things, pat yourself or us on the back here in Worlds Collide Twitch towards that. So thank you so much.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a relay race.
That's right, the Super Bowl relay flags. It's a pretty popular flag set that is very quick, very fast, doesn't take a lot of time to do. I think most of the time it's within 45 minutes to an hour. It's pretty fun, so in case you want to see that. And I believe it's a relay, so basically I think, right, Turdsman, there are several runners queued up back to back to back. So
yeah, I think it's 3 teams of 2? No, 2 teams of 3. So yeah, that's going to be a good one. Looking forward to that.
Double Down finding an Atma weapon there in a chest in the South Figaro basement. So not taking off the Moogle Charm here in the South Figaro basement. As you mentioned, we don't really have any grind fight checks with this crew, although you can fight the soldiers, or rather the wolves, on the way to the Moogle defense check, but there's only 6 of them max, so that might not be ideal for you fighting random battles here. So we'll see how our runners decide to get off of level 3. I did see that the Tizen Thief was selling something for 11,000 GP in the World of Ruin. Now, normally in a barter seed, Tizen Thief is way out of touch, as there's a 54k Tizen Thief in the World of Balance. But hello! Those are some experience eggs there in Tizen. How are you doing?
Oh yeah. That's what you want to find. That becomes then the focus. You have to get some of those for everybody on your team because they're cost as much money as anything else. So selling off whatever you got to get those eggs is very important when you find them. We did get to see World of Balance Zen on Judge Joe's side. Not quite as stacked on the shops, but we did get word from the thief that he is selling a Medj site. So if our runners are really hard up, they can go into that in the World of Ruin to get it for substantially cheaper.
Yeah, normally even $11,000 at $500 a pop. That's quick math here. 22 items that you need to sell. It's not awful, but at the same time, that's a lot of things you have to accrue. You have to be a real person on a episode of Hoarders in order to get the Tizen Thief here. Looks like
that's.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say that's probably more of an end game strategy.
All right, well, if you didn't want to buy one, there is an experience egg in a chest in the armor shop there in Albrook for Papa Shango.
Save 2,000 gold.
There you go. So yeah, Judge Joe looks like they are also talking to the conga line of gentlemen there, giving them the time. So he's going to go check the clock, and the clock will have a definite answer for either the hours or minutes or seconds. And I believe in this seed it's going to be the hours because everybody else is telling me minutes and seconds. So our hour indicator is definitely 4. And by process of elimination, we could figure out what the minutes and seconds are here.
and he's going to be very happy with his reward at the end of this. Meanwhile, we have Double Down selling a farm here for their pack of experience eggs.
Yeah, of course.
Opting to buy 3 right now. Presumably, they'll get that 4th one later when they get that 4th character.
Yeah, so even though experience eggs are arguably the best item in the game, doubling the experience of your characters, it also means that you're using up a relic slot that would otherwise go towards something like a damage boosting relic, like earrings, or maybe something that makes you take more turns, like running or Marvel shoes, or something that takes out the chance of getting a bad negative status effect like that ribbon there. So, you might not want to buy an experience egg for everybody in your party. Well, we only have 3 characters now too, so that probably makes sense too.
Yeah, not strictly necessary right now, but yeah, you can't do the Dragonhorn combo. Oh boy, Double Down finding Illuminas in a shop. Not gonna have to worry buying 2 right away without thinking about it.
Where the heck is World of Balance Albrook? Wow. Albrook is stacked because there's that egg right there, and then there's the Illuminas in the weapon shop here. Papa Shango and Thamasa here, so we're gonna see what's in the shops here as well. Looks like Judge Joe is trying to do this little process of elimination thing. So you can go and get all of the clues, or you can just go and get some of the clues, and it looks like he got just some of the clues and not all of the clues, so you have to kind of guess at filling in the rest of it there.
Yeah, I think it's about like a 50-second or so time save for not going the rest of the way to ask those last 2 things, but then you can make that up if you happen to get it on the first or second try.
All right,
it's a bit of a risk, but
Illumina is the get here, and it looks like that is what he's going to do. Moogle Charm is off all of the tools as well, so he can choose whatever he wants with Edgar. So we already have Lock with an Illumina build, and then Edgar can use Drill or whatever else he wants to use. Did you happen to see what the lures were on Mog? We definitely see Arrow there as well as Aqua Rake, so we already have at least one decent lure with Arrow.
I believe Quasar and Blowfish are also in the list, which can be very useful in different spots. I think there was an economizer floating around in one of the shops somewhere. I forget where exactly, but that could be a potential build for Mog. And we did see on the Torado, which Judge Joe picked up early on. I'm not sure if Honeydew did as well, but that has a Magic +2 buff on it. So off that on Mog.
Yeah, give that to Mog and forget about it.
Yep.
So Albrook even more stacked. There are Genji gloves in the relic shop, so you can buy your Illuminas and Genji gloves just in that one town. By the way, Karan's coming in with a party of 5. Welcome, Raiders. Come and sit down. You have a nice table over here in the corner that you could. This way, you could judge everybody that's on stream. I love judging people at restaurants.
Oh yeah, it's the best part of this. That's why I do this.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm slightly judging here. So yeah, it's about 12,000 for Zen Thief. That's good knowledge to have just in case later on in the game we definitely need to go and buy ourselves our last piece of progression. As Papa Shango is grabbing both the Curse Shield and the Esper there. Judge Joe has got enough levels from those 1 or 2 fights that he took in Zozo, and it's number 24 here at the Tunnel Armor spot.
Yeah, I think it's we're about at the point where everybody kind of went to the same spots, but they went in sort of a different order. And now I think we're going to start to see some divergence here based on who found what. Almost all of our runners have found found a Lumina at some point. It looks like Papa Shango picked up a Valiant Knife.
Yeah, where the heck was that?
I think I remember where that is. There's one that you get from I think it was a dead check that you get a Valiant Knife from. I know there's a second one in, I want to say Daryl's Tomb or something like that. But
interesting.
Yeah, there's a couple of those floating around. There's a ton of Illuminas. That Atma weapon probably isn't going to get see much use at the end of the scene, unfortunately. But
yeah, there's also a Ragnarok there too. So he's got a Valiant Knife and a Ragnarok, whereas everybody else seems to have found that Illumina shop. So it'll be interesting to see the bit of divergence here. I know when I ran my seed, I ran into a shop that was selling very valuable swords as well. Wasn't the shops that any of our runners had checked yet. but we'll see if it shows up here.
Yeah, chat bailing us out. Thamasa Weapon Shop had rags and VKs.
Oh, jeez.
Okay. I must have gone to the other one.
Yeah, I also found Ragnaroks, but I was in World of Ruin Nikea, which is not normally a spot you go to. But with barter seeds, I don't know about you, Tursman, but I like to go to at least one or two off the beaten path shops to see if I could find something interesting that nobody else might come across.
Yeah, we saw it displayed in full volume and in Technicolor here. If you have 100% random shops, that is going to be where you are most likely to get a bunch of power. Technically, of course, there could have been no swords better than a scimitar at any of those shops, but not as likely to happen in a 100% randomized shop seed.
All right, so Honeydew going to go ahead and break this fire rod here for this battle to try and just get out of it very quickly in order to get off of level 3. Getting a bunch of XP there. Thank you very much, Eggs. Appreciate that.
That's definitely a good one to do that with. And looks like they've got a little something planned, or are they going to go back? Okay. Going to go take a drink.
Yeah, it looks like they entered South Figaro from the other entrance, whereas Judge Joe entered it from the south entrance. If you go into the South Figaro cave from the north entrance, you have to walk all the way back to the entrance tile in the south entrance to trigger the event to get you to the boss here. That's a lot of words to say. He went in the wrong way.
Yeah, he go in wrong way. You got to step on that one specific tile to get everything up and running. Judge Joe, unfortunately, having a bit of trouble with number 24. Confused Edgar repeatedly at the beginning of the fight, and the whole thing, unfortunately, ended up taking so long that Locke succumbed to the cursed ring.
I believe he's uncursing the shield.
Oh, you're right. Yes, that is what it is.
All right, so here comes Quasar out for Honeydew, so it seems that we've got enough MP to start casting ridiculous spells, and that's what Mog is going to do. So we have our plan for the seed already at 15 minutes in. It's Illuminas and/or Ragnaroks and/or Valiant Knives, and then Mog hurls space rocks at things.
Yep. Yeah, with when you find that many cheap swords in a shop, you're probably going to want to try to lean as far into a physical build as you can. But also with, find a Magic +2 Esper. I'm not made of stone. I'll use that.
All right. Well, thank you very much, number 24, for telling me how much HP you have left. And now it's 30, because that was like 305 before.
Yeah.
So one more drill should do it. Judge Joe is going to get out of here. Unfortunately, he must not have any Phoenix Downs to get Locke back up. So that's going to be unfortunate. That's going to be a lost Curse Shield, Uncursed battle, and no XP there for Locke as well. And unlike in the last flag set, and yes, I'm going to bring that up as many times as I can, there is no split XP in there is, everybody gets the same amount of XP this week.
Yep. Yeah, the number that pops up in the window is not a lie in this particular flag set. Finding an HP +50 Esper on there. Not too shabby. Would have, liked to have that on the lock, given that there's a Valiant Knife floating around, but Judge Joe doesn't seem to have found it yet.
Yeah, we can't really... the Valiant Knife. I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about the Atma weapon. There's also an Atma weapon in play, too, which is pretty wild as well. It looks like he's going to go ahead and buy some more Phoenix Downs from the shop here before continuing onwards. And unfortunately for Double Down, these magic urns do not give any XP. They will give you 25 MP, which is nice if you're trying to learn a spell. But otherwise, not so much.
An additional misfortune for Papa Shango. Not seeing anything he liked in the Colosseum, deciding to grab a random buckler and got hit in the face with an Orog for his troubles.
Yeah, I think the buckler traded for 4 shields, which is not terrible. And whatever this is trading for a red jacket, which is not terrible either.
Yeah.
Hey! Hi there.
Oh, look at that!
Now, unfortunately, he's going to die in this fight, too.
I mean, honestly, that's fine. You got a Super Ball out of it. I mean, you still got to get the stats, but...
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Honeydew heading up to the Narsh Shack. We'll see if they're going to be going through the Mog checks here.
Yeah, activating Lone Wolf is a good indicator that we're going to go up top of Narsh here. The only problem is that if we want to do the Norsh battle, Kefkat Norsh fight, that means that we're going to have to leave one of our 3 party members behind. So it'll be a 2v whatever the boss is up there instead of a 3v or potentially 4v if we come back there later.
I think in a lot of cases that is kind of nerve-wracking, but considering how many high-value weapons we have floating around, I don't think it'd be quite as scary to have a 2-person party. It would be a bummer because you wouldn't get to take any of those grind fights to possibly uncurse that shield without, severely hindering whoever happens to get left out. But
looks like Papa Shango is going to head over here and grab that offering from the relic shop for that Valiant Knife build, and I don't blame him. I think he's the only one that has the Valiant Knife build that has been discovered.
Yeah, I haven't seen anybody else go to Thamasa, which, makes sense if you don't have Strago, but like we were saying earlier, it's kind of nice to go to some of the other towns that you might not necessarily go to, and I like Thamasa in these flag sets because there's a couple items floating around too. So worst case scenario, you find 5 things you don't care about that you can trade for something that you do care about.
Yeah, and Thamasa is a relatively small town. Most of the shops are on basically 1 or 2 screens. That's kind of what I look for in a barter seat, is we have Celeste here at the top of Lone Wolf, and I believe that was Cyan that we also passed at Kefkat Norsh?
Yep.
Oh, wow.
So that's actually
Party at the top of Norsh. Why weren't we invited?
Well, we had to watch.
Oh, okay.
Somebody has to be there observing the party. We're
Gotcha.
journalists.
We're the chaperones.
Yeah. So 2 characters that are, Cyan doesn't get quite as much love as Celeste does due to his bad equip selection for default.
Say bad everything.
Okay, come on. He's got a great mustache.
Oh, for sure. Yes.
But he also has great checks, which Celeste does as well. But those are 2 huge characters for checks that really pop the seat open if you happen to get them both at the same time.
Yeah, I think that we're going to keep Celeste in our party, given the fact that we know where Illumina's and or Ragnarok's are, and Celeste can definitely use those, whereas Cyan is a question mark as to whether they can use them. So we have, like I said, we already knew what our builds were going to be at the very start of the seed. Right now, we just have added another character to use Big Sword, so we have 3 Big Sword users, 1 Big Magic user, and we're good to go.
Oh yeah, absolutely no reason to change a working plan, even this early in a seed like this. You figured it out.
Niles and Frazier here at the Norsh battle. So we take out the cranes and we get Cyan. That's the deal. Papa Shango, meanwhile, taking down their first boss of the seed at the South Figaro Cave. And Judge Joe is doing Edgar's loop of checks. So there's kind of 2 different forks that you can go down, which is the Mog loop and the Edgar loop. We'll see what the Edgar loop has, and it's a giant flaming meatball, I guess, on top of this pasta, question mark. Anybody hungry?
Okay. Yeah, I can see it. I see it. So yeah, this will be interesting. I'm curious to see if Judge Joe is going to continue down into the castle after this. There's a dragon down there, which is very nice. There's a monster in a box, which usually is a much bigger deal if you don't have offerings for sale for 2,000 in a shop.
Yep.
But there's definitely reasons to go down there. No boss, but as we mentioned earlier, there's plenty of ways to get around that when you get to the end of the game.
All right, so Celeste is down over on Honeydew's side, and Papa Shango, activating the Moogle defense, sees a Mog falling through the floor. So this will not be a character. This is either going to be an Esper or an item for them there. Little does he know that all of the other characters are at the top of Norsh, not at the bottom of it here.
Yeah, we'll see if he heads up the mountain after dealing with these fights here. I don't disagree with this. You don't necessarily know if you're going to find something up there that you want, but this particular check, you can get some fights out of it. You get a boss, you get a check. It's a good one to do first. And yeah, Papa Shango is going to run up and take all these Lobos and guards. Not a lot of experience, but you're probably not going to have to sweat too hard getting rid of these guys.
No, not at all. Both Double Down and Honeydew picking up their 5th characters already. as well as their second boss, Judge Joe, fending off that Flame Eater with some little vanilla action using Aqua Rake, which is what you do in the vanilla game with Strago. Getting another Esper, so they're our first runner up to 3 shiny stones here. And we'll see if they decide to go all the way through to the Ancient Castle. As you mentioned earlier, Turdsman, there is no boss down here, so it won't count towards your boss counter. But at the same time, if you don't do this now, this is the best time to do it.
Yeah, you don't want to have to come back here. And it looks like they are going to go through there. The other sort of, I guess, meta strategy here might be that this is not going to be a very popular check in this particular flag set. So if you find something really incredible down there, nobody else might have access to it. Like an Esper with a really good stat bonus, I think, would be probably what Judge Joe was hoping to find down here.
Meanwhile, Papa Shango, seeing that the boss here is Inferno and deciding to use Capture with Lock, and the reason why is because you could steal an elemental shield from every single part of this boss. So he's already stolen 1 ice shield. We'll see if he thieves away, treasure hunters away with a couple of other elemental shields here.
A fun quirk of the offering. I believe the offering does, it looks like, yes, the offering does work with Capture as well. So he gets 4 chances to steal from the 3 parts. Picked up the Flame Shield, couldn't quite get that 3rd one.
Yeah, so part of Worlds Collide is we do a lot of vanilla bug fixes and updates and changes, and one of the things we decided was to fix the Capture bug to work with some of the weapons it normally doesn't, like the fixed dice in the vanilla game, and also to work better with the offering here. So that's why you sort of see it going to work. But Papa Shango is in a bit of trouble there as we get a clutch block from Locke.
Yeah, this Inferno definitely bullying the 2 players that decided to go after them. He's a tough fight, but unless you can if you can't reliably get rid of his two little arms there, then he's going to be hitting you 3 times in a turn.
Not a character here. Yep.
Judge Joe's getting Starlet.
Oh, it's got Berserk on it.
Okay,
but
Berserk's
that's
handy.
about it. It's a bleh. I mean,
yeah,
it's fine. It's good. It's good for it's good for this boss here. Unfortunately, we don't know it yet. And is that Go-Go? We already have our 6th character.
Yep. Yeah, I found Go-Go down there in the basement, and it looks like Honeydew picked them up right away. Remember, he was having a little bit of muscle memory going down that hallway to pick up a chest that doesn't exist anymore.
And as if you didn't get enough elemental shields from Inferno fight, I think it also gave a Thunder Shield as the reward there at Moogle Defense. So not exactly what you'd like to see. But
yes,
if we run into an Esper with Merton on it, I think between all the things we've stolen and all the things we've acquired so far, we're in pretty good shape.
Yeah, there's lots of elemental defense available, and including a bunch of little ones that other people have found along the way, like that red jacket that Double Down picked up out of nowhere.
What's not in good shape here is Judge Joe, but just barely surviving that dragon fight. I think Edgar, or rather Locke, is still level 5. He's been face down basically this whole game, which is a bit unfortunate for them because they only have 3 characters. However, now at this point, right, they either have Mog Stuff or Phoenix Cave. So they'll be on the right track coming out of this. Papa Shango at the top of Narsh, seeing the Thunder Shield or Celeste's choice and choosing wisely there. And our other runners are fighting SR Behemoth, our Sriracha Spicy Behemoth here.
Super rare Behemoth. 5 stars. And Papa Shango collecting their characters at the top of Narsh here. Ooh, X-Zone cast not hitting the first one. That is a fun quirk of these some of these monsters that are undead in the original is in most Worlds Collide flag sets that we take their undead status away from them, so you can't just throw a Phoenix down on them. However, that does make some of them susceptible to instant death, so we saw some fun air anchor action from Honeydew's Edgar. Ooh, it looks like they did opt to remove the lock in their party for Cyan. So we'll see if there's some equipment considerations that they have there.
Yeah, that's. I'm sorry. It was a flame shield at Moogle Defense and a thunder shield here at Dome of Siege. So whatever. It's just more stuff to throw at the final boss. I'm never usually that upset at an elemental shield that I get.
Yeah, they're a very good item to put in your offhand in general. I think there is kind of like a critical mass. You know, if you start finding maybe like 6 or 7 of them, and you just start feeling like, hey, come on, just save some of that for next week.
Yeah. Or can I have this on a seed with Merton, please?
Right, yes.
All right,
I ordered Merton with this.
So now our corner runners have pivoted to 3-part checks. Double Down going to the Dream, Honeydew going to the Magitech Factory. So, Turdsman, when you get to either your character requirements or your Esper requirements, does that affect your routing in terms of like what checks you choose that you want to do?
Oh, absolutely. It's not a huge problem to end up with the extra character or extra Esper checks for skip, but I don't believe that is the case in this flag set. So finding those extras only would give you extra checks. So you definitely want to be a little bit pickier about which checks you go to here. I do like this play for the Magitech facility. The first 2 checks here are both bosses, and they offer only an item or an Esper. But the 3rd check can be a character. Thankfully, it does have 2 bosses attached to it, so this is a very boss-heavy series of checks that Honeydew is doing.
Yeah, so that was going to be my other question. Do you go all the way to the back, even though it has a chance to be the character, because you get 2 bosses under your belt before the minecart, or the end of the minecart ride, if you will?
I do think so. Although I think somebody mentioning in the chat that Honeydew does not have a series of experience eggs on their characters. I'm not sure if they just forgot to go back and purchase them, or maybe just never ran into them. They were only in, I want to say, 1 or 2 shops. I forget exactly how many, but
yeah,
you're just as likely to not go.
I did not go with when I found my Ragnaroks like early on, and I just said, okay, I don't really need to shop anymore. Thanks, I know what I'm doing. So I never found them either. So it's definitely possible to just forget about, or not forget, but to just say, yeah, I'm done with shopping. I'm good here, right? Because Honeydew has Valiant Knife offering. He's got Illumina. He's got a bunch of stuff there.
Yeah, like you just mentioned all of the tools that he has available. Like, it's not a bad call to decide, like, hey, I'm full. I'm not going to go back to the buffet anymore. Unfortunately, they had some really nice omelets that they put up right after you left, bro.
3rd dead check in a row there for Honey with the Mario hat. Ugh. So it looks like, I think the long-term plan is the Atma weapon there on our Samurai.
Not a bad character for that, and the additional stats mean that Cyan's speed is thankfully not complete garbage in this flag set. He came out of the box with, I want to say, 35, which is respectable.
Yeah, that's pretty good. All right, so Papa Shango going to grab their go-go here in the South Figaro prisoner spot, and they already have all their characters that they need. They just need to go find these shiny stones. Alexander, it looks like, was the first reward there in Cyan's Dream. So we're going to see what the second spot is. The second spot is, I believe, a Esper here, right? There's an NPC. We'll see it right here. Yep, that's a ghost.
Yes.
So we have at least 2 Espers. Maybe we can get the 3-for-3 trifecta.
Yeah, very nice spells. Oh, hey, Luradan, though. So if you happen to run into a rage user, they'll have a good option. Although I guess we're kind of past that at this point.
Yeah, we don't really need
Illumina's Illumina's and Genji gloves in the same town.
Yeah, but it does help towards uncursing the shield. Yeah, there's the Valiant Knife Ragnarok shop that we talked about earlier. Papa Shango re-upping on the Ragnarok there.
And Judge Joe making their way through the Kefka at Narsh check and take out the cranes.
Honeydew obliterating Narsh Battle Kefka there with that
Oh,
that magic power plus Esper just putting in work. 5,000 damage already, and we're 33 minutes into the seed. That's kind of ridiculous.
yeah, with like level 2 spells, I think. Oh, no, wait, no, he was using lures.
Yeah, Quasar is pretty good, but it's usually not that good.
Yeah, I believe it's high battle power, but it's still affected by defense, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's correct.
Grand Train's the one. You got to get that triangle on the screen.
Choo choo.
It's the most mystical. It's the most mystical shape in 1995. And double down, getting a Minerva at the very end. Only two Espers out of the dream. Not so bad.
Yeah, well, we already know where the 6 characters are, right? So checks that will give us Espers are going to be the ones that we're going to be profiting towards. And we'll see
Very
from
true.
Honeydew's side whether or not we get a second Esper out of the Magitech Factory, or if it's going to be 1 Esper, 1 character here at the end of the minecart ride.
Looks like Papa Shango heading into the dream here after double down. The Minerva at the very end, actually, I think Papa Shango might be able to make some more use of. If Locke can equip that, that makes him a much more potent Valiant Knife user in the front row if he's immune to a bunch of elemental damage, as opposed to absorbing it with Paladin Shield or any of the elemental shields.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of finding a Valiant Knife user that can pop a Minerva on.
Yeah, I mean, you do want to have your Valiant Knife user at lower HP, but you also don't want to have to babysit them to pick them back up every turn, right? That also wastes time.
It's not so bad if you can buy regular Phoenix Downs from anywhere, but unfortunately with the Barter Seed being as it is, and Fun Baba being as he is.
He's not wasting any time. Putting in the effort for the no leg day Funbaba here.
And I believe there's been a lot of Cure 3 on Espers floating around, but I only saw Life 3 on any of them. I don't know if they have any spells to res anybody.
Ruh-roh.
Yeah, there's the Life 3 there.
Look at what we got at the end of the minecart ride here.
Oh, yeah!
Oh, boy.
I forgot to mention that Magimaster is at the end of the minecart ride.
Where is that Berserk spell when we need it?
That is one screen to the left of Honeydew, unfortunately. Judge Joe, if they happen to go on that same path, they are going to have a much easier time with this boss than everybody else due to that Berserk find.
Yeah, Judge Joe in a spot of bother here, only having 1 character up against our Senior Behemoth. Dr. DT saying Crusader summon, question mark? I mean, that's an interesting strategy there, Cotton. We'll see if it pays off for them.
Yeah, it's exciting.
I think between Quasar... Yeah, Quasar... Look at how much damage Quasar is doing.
Holy moly.
It's insane. I was going to say, between Quasar and getting, 7 Flush or Chocobop, he should be able to pull through this, especially with that Paladin Shield uncursed, but thankfully he got most of his people up, and Judge Joe gets at least 1 other person up with Edgar using the air anchor on the second half of SR Behemoth. So good strategy to pull up the character that can instant death that boss that's in front of you.
And Honeydew getting their next Esper from the end of this. Have to deal with Atma in the sky, which can be kind of a pain if you have a bunch of Illuminas, but I don't think Honeydew is leaning on those quite as hard as everybody else.
Yeah. We have Mog with Quasar, which is insane power, the speed.
Yeah.
We haven't seen very many good spells on Espers there. We have the tier 2 elemental spells, of course, from all the shields that we got. But I didn't see any, level 3 spells or Pearl or Merton or anything like that.
I do remember a couple from when I ran the seed last week. We'll see if they happen to come across them quickly enough to be able to pop them on Mog to make them super useful. So we'll see. They're out there, but this hunt for Espers now, I think, is going to be really tough for a bunch of our runners. There's a lot of dead checks floating around out there. I think both the Dream and the Magitech facility had 1 apiece, so you're not quite getting that full 3 for 3 boost that you might want to get from a longer check like that.
Yeah, so that brings up the possibility of us having to go get a 7th character just to have enough checks in order for us to get 5 more espers here.
Yeah, and that's where you get really picky, right? You don't necessarily want to increase scaling any extra, because that's a bit more significant than it might be in some other seeds. But, finding, say, Sabin or Setzer, for example, I think would be... Those are my 2 go-to examples. Instead of doing Phoenix Cave, would probably be a better use of your time. So yeah, we're seeing Honeydew heading into the dream himself, grabbing a little item on the way, while Double Down goes through the Magitech research facility. That's kind of an interesting... This is very interesting, since a lot of our runners found these 2 characters at pretty similar times. We're seeing them kind of pick through the really important ones. They're taking a lot of the same checks, but they're doing them in a slightly different order, which can have a pretty significant effect depending on what you find in there. Not a lot of extreme stat points. Nothing like finding that Magic +2 Esper at the beginning, but there's a Speed Phantom floating around. There's a couple of Life 3, Cure 3 Espers floating around.
Yeah, there's a Esper with Berserk somewhere, so Judge Joe is going to hopefully be prepared for this Magimaster at the end of the minecart. I'm not so sure that Double Down is going to be ready for that jelly, if you will.
No, that's going to be a bit tighter, because I'm not sure. It looks... Yeah, Double Down is rolling with
6 Illuminas.
6 Illuminas, which is undoubtedly, inarguably extremely cool, but that's not going to help him quite as much as he might like when he runs into Magimaster.
Magimaster doesn't care about your Illuminas. Unless you'd like to tickle him to death.
Might do double-digit damage to him, though. That's pretty significant.
Or it also might heal him if Pearl Proc goes off in the wall.
That's true.
So.
But it looks like Double Down does still have Mog in the team, so worst case scenario, you can just Quasar over and over again.
While we have our left-hand runners in the Magitech Factory and our right-hand runners in Cyan's Dream, make sure you pop them a follow here on Twitch. Most of them... I've asked a few of them for their VODs, but the other ones don't know that they're being featured, so give them some love if you would like to, because we can't have the races without the runners, so.
Absolutely. Oh, Papa Shango going up against Air Force here. Locke running kind of low, but let's see what he's doing for damage output. We can get some numbers that aren't obscured by a different... I think that looked like it was about 2,000.
Yeah, this boss always obscures the damage to the middle part here. So, Tersman, let's talk about where we have not gone yet with our runners. We have not done the Zone Eater from GoGo, which all of our runners, looking at the tracker, has picked up. We haven't seen Phoenix Cave, and we haven't seen Mount Zozo either. Where else? And Opera House Disruption. So one of those 4 checks has to be where another character is, because in Worlds Collide, every seed is 100%able from a logical standpoint, meaning you have to have the ability to get all 14 characters, and once you have all 14 characters, you have all of the checks open to you, which means you can get all of the Espers then too, right, as sort of a consequence of that. So... We'll have to see if our runners need to get another character or if they could just eke out having Espers, because we know Zen Thief is 1, right? And some of our runners have 5 Espers, so it's going to be rather close to see if we can do it with just 6.
Yeah, I suppose Double Down might be able to do that. I think they have not picked up the Zen Thief yet. And they're the ones with 5. They're one with 5 Espers, so I think they might be able to, accidentally run through it and get 3 more rocks before they find that one character. But I think I remember one spot where there is one that's left, but I don't remember what the rest of them are.
Judge Joe, the only runner with the Berserk Esper, warping out of Magitech Factory before hitting that Magimaster. So we do know that both Double Down and Honeydew will be at 6 espers apiece when they're out of here. So it might be possible to get to that 9 esper mark without needing to go get another character. So we'll see. We'll see how Double Down decides to take on this this fight here.
Taking some swings, unfortunately does not proc a Pearl in that first hit with Edgar. I think that might have been what he was hoping for there, and now it's just Quasar.
Yeah, so thinking about it a little bit more, Turdsman, the only runner that's done the Edgar stuff, I believe, is Judge Joe, right? So those are 2 espers there. So that plus to Zen Thief means we can definitely get to 9 without having to get another character. But you have to commit to a check that you know is very long and doesn't have a boss at the end of it. So we'll see if that is worth it for Honeydew and Double Down here.
I think, let's see, 2 of the 4 checks available now, I guess, besides Zen Thief. I'm not sure, I don't think that was included in the 4 that you mentioned, but 2 of them do not have a boss at the end of it, Mount Zozo and Phoenix Cave. So those are, Mount Zozo's a little bit quicker and it's got a dragon in it, so that at very least gives you something to do on your way up there. But the other 2 do. Opera House Disruption is a bit of a rough putt, I think, this late in the seed. That cutscene at the end of it takes a little bit longer than you want it to.
Oh, and I've
go get your Thunder Shield.
I also forgot about this here. Honeydew going up to Tritalk Cliff for a potential Esper item check. I always, this is a blind spot for me that I always forget about as a runner, so good on Honeydew for remembering it. So here's another potential Esper at the top, and Double Down gets through the Magimaster fight there with, Space Stones and Haste 2, which you normally never see in Worlds Collide.
Yeah, Haste is not quite as popular. It's a nice buff to have if you're going to be in a fight for a little while, but usually you want to pump out some damage instead. But thankfully, Double Down, it's a little dicey. Had to cast Life 3 a few times, but managed to get through it.
Judge Joe, meanwhile, grabbing boss number 7, Esper number 6 there. Double Down will grab Esper number 6 and boss number 9. So both Double Down and Honeydew are at that sweet spot where now they can know that they can get skip if they do some KT shenanigans. So
yes, yeah. So now I think might be a good time to be a little bit less cavalier with the boss checks. Now that you can either run up that middle lane or go grab the Toilet Atma or something like that to augment your bosses at the end of the game. You can be a little bit more creative in picking some of the non-boss checks.
And remember, just in case this wasn't clear, dragons do not count as bosses. That's why they're separate on the tracker here. But just in case you were wondering, no, bosses don't count as, or rather, dragons do not count as bosses. They're separate sort of checks when it comes to the objective system.
All right, we got Papa Shango and Judge Joe finishing up their multi-part checks while Honeydew runs into something you also don't really want to find if you are relying on Illuminas, although that Edgar sure...
Well, now...
Edgar doing 9k with a single swing, not too shabby.
Yeah, I think part of it is the gauntlet. The other part is if you hit an enemy in the back, it does twice as much damage. So what the side that Goddess is sort of, is sort of clutching the ball on, that is the side that she is facing, and the side where her arm is up, that's technically her back. So if she always starts out facing to the right, in this pincer sort of attack, and when she counters, she'll face obviously whatever character attacked her to counter. So that first swing was definitely a hit in the back.
Unfortunately, Honeydew finding a Marvel shoes.
Throw it back. Throw it back.
Killing Goddess, stealing her Jordans, and warping right out.
Throw it back.
Yeah. A little bit less exciting than it was last week.
Papa Shango taking out another boss there. That was the red cap. Double Down here is making the play that you were talking about earlier. Opera House Disruption, a bit of a long one. And we're going to see some more new 411 from Honeydew here at Mount Zozo. And he can afford the Rust Rid. Thank goodness.
Oh, yeah. That's always embarrassing.
Well, in barter seeds especially, because your money is always kind of funny, right?
Yeah, that's true. Double down finding Mesosaurs up here. Let's see if they... Yeah, I was going to go ahead and Quasar through that. These are reasonable. They're, you know, mid-game fights. Might be worth a couple extra levels, but I think given that there's 3 checks left, probably not hurting for levels by the end of it.
Yeah, he's got experience eggs on all of his characters, so this is just going to make whatever the next fight is after this super duper comfortable and easy.
Which I do, it is nice to not have to worry about. You know, like Double Down's ran into a couple of bosses that's given him some guff up to this point. Doesn't necessarily want to have that happen again. Honeydew, meanwhile, taking on the Dirt Durgan up here at top of Mount Zozo.
I did not see what that other dragon. It was Skull Dragon in top of Narsh. I didn't see what it dropped.
Oh shoot, I missed that too.
I mean, I don't think it really matters because you could basically find everything in a shop. Like, you shouldn't touch a chest anymore. Should be no reason to do that. So,
unless you want to have 4 characters who are swinging Illuminas around, which...
Well, true, unless you need more Phoenix Downs, right? We've seen a lot of runners having problems with dead characters.
That's true. Yeah, Phoenix Downs and or elixirs to use in lieu of sleeping bags. Okay, the Skull Dragon dropped a Magus Rod. That's not, you know, that's not bad if Mog can use it.
Yeah, it's a good stat stick for Mog there. So thank you very much, Stardust Sneeze. And that
he's probably...
Fixed ice there from the Dirt Durgan in Mount Zozo. Definitely don't want to use that at all.
Yep. We are way beyond that.
Hey.
I imagine Mog is probably up to like 80 or 90 magic at this point, so... Honeydew finding their another Esper here at the top of Mount Zozo. Judge Joe right behind him.
Yeah, Papa Shango going to be in for a rude awakening in T-minus a few seconds here.
Best of luck.
And we get to see some new information here from Double Down. What is the boss in Opera House?
Yeah, only a small handful of the real bruisers left. Yeah, Ifrit and Shiva, not quite too scary.
I mean, it depends on what you got. Like, they have some pretty high defense against physical attacks. Not against Quasar, though.
Yeah, those Illumina swings didn't do so hot, but Space Rocks will make up the difference.
Yep, there it is. See you later, guys.
Big ups to Quasar. Doesn't get a whole lot of screen time because it's bad. So very glad that it gets to hang out here on the screen.
Shots fired. Quasar definitely has like one of the coolest sounding animations in the entire game. Let's give it up for Quasar there. And oh
yeah. Hey, okay.
We've got a Figabro with Sabin there, who opens up a boatload of checks for us now.
That's definitely a good character to find here if you want some more checks. Yeah. He's got a lot of checks that are quick, but have some fights ahead of you. You know, you can do the looks like he's going straight to Barren Falls. That is a good call.
Yeah, a lot of peekable checks as well. Phantom Train, you can see what the reward is before you go through it. Imperial Camp, you got to do the first forced encounter, but then you could see what the reward is after that. Same goes for Collapsing House. You can see what is holding up the house. So Sabin is a very good character to get towards the end of the seed, but also a very good character to get at the beginning, because Imperial Camp is quite a good check for, early game.
We got Honeydew selling the farm here. I'm really curious what they are going to be buying. Oh, this is Zen Thief. Okay.
Oh, hello.
Fenrir.
Calmness Protection with Berserk
very
again.
Nice find.
He wished he would have had that earlier.
Yeah, it's a little late for that, but...
Ultros 2 in the waterfall. Kind of makes sense. And, oh, there is the skip complete, so I must be behind on my boss count there for Double Down.
Judge Joe getting their 8th Esper here. Meanwhile, Honeydew heading into, it looked like that was Narsh. I'm not sure. They might be in here to spend some money, or they're just gonna drink out of a bucket, perhaps.
Did they do Moogle defense? Because I know one of our runners peaked it
Maybe
and
not.
or I think somebody peaked it and reset, or not peaked it and reset, but
So yeah, it looks like it was Honeydew.
all right. Well, he's gonna see the Mog and be happy, but then he's gonna get to the end of the check.
Alas.
I mean, it is another boss under his belt, right? And he's got, if my tracking was correct, 10 bosses here.
Oh, that's true.
We could see that I also, since I'm doing restream and commentary and tracking, sometimes I don't button the buttons as well as I probably should, but that's okay.
Yeah, Schwantz is pulling triple duty tonight.
You said duty.
I did.
Imperial camp here for double down, so we'll see what this reward is, and this fight we could run away from. Or we could not.
I mean, sometimes you got to show these Imperial soldiers, what they're up against, which is the power of the cosmos. Maybe you want to go home, Maybe you see what happened to your buddy there, and you go like, hey, this job doesn't pay enough.
Hey, there's another character.
Okay. That's maybe not what you want to see at this point, but...
Yeah, that's a reset.
Yep, he's out.
Meanwhile, Judge Joe is our first runner in Go mode, I believe, with Fenrir from Tzen Thief. However, if my tracking is correct, he only has 8 bosses. So we'll see if they do some shenanigans to try and pull off a little full party dive into Kefka's Tower and then skip back to the midpoint there.
Yeah, given Judge Joe's levels, I think that would be a really smart play. Get Locke up to somewhere in the mid-30s, and don't, sacrifice a bunch of experience on everybody else in the meantime. Getting that skip to go back up in there after the fact is not a bad, that's not a bad way of doing it. It still saves a bunch of time, and we can see, Judge Joe doesn't necessarily know it while they were playing, but we can see that they got their go mode substantially faster than everybody else. So this can, this is a way of spending that advantage in a way that might be a little bit more of a conservative play, but I think it's still a smart one.
Yeah, I mean, even if you're going through the tower more than once, you're still working towards the end goal of defeating the final boss, right? And don't forget that when you have your full party in Kefka's Tower facing one lane, that's going to do the boss battles a lot faster than runners that, let's say, like Double Down already has his 12 bosses, right? So he's going to go right in for skip, but he has to split up his party 2-1-1. So so Judge Joe is going to be taking down these bosses way faster than someone else. And was that an Esper for Double Down?
No, that was an Aegis Shield, unfortunately.
Oh my god, what is with the dead checks this seed?
Managed to grab one from the Tzen Thief, but unfortunately is still going to have to look around for that last one. We'll see if, I guess Mount Colts or the Phantom Train.
And as if you didn't have enough Illuminas in the seed, the the Atma spot also dropped an Illumina, and Honeydew is going to peak the reward here at the engine room. You could see what the sprite is that's leading the thieves down to the treasure room, and it's not a character, so he's going to go ahead and do this because remember, he needs 1 Esper left.
And 1 boss, too. So if this... I believe this was an Esper earlier, so this is going to give Honeydew his skip and his Kefka unlock at the same time.
Meanwhile, Judge Joe reforming the party there after taking 1 boss out in Kefka's Tower. Going to take on the Inferno, Guardian, and Poltergeist spots, so that'll give him 12 bosses, and it will allow him to skip back in at the statues and do the side ones with 2 apiece. So we'll see here how fast he clears out this tower.
Yeah, smart play from Judge Joe, remembering exactly how many he needs to get in there, and they're, you're okay with 8. You're going to have to do the little double dip into it, but 8 bosses will get you through it if you're willing to make this trek.
Dr. DT noticing something that I did not. Does Judge Joe have warp? Because he used his last warp stone, and the thing with Kefka's Tower is you can get out of it without a warp stone. However, you can only do it at the very beginning of the tower with those hooks. So hopefully he's learned the warp spell. Otherwise, this could be a disastrous walk of shame.
Yeah. There was a lot of gray magic floating around on some of those espers, which warp is one of those ones where your eyes kind of glaze over it a lot of the time because you don't necessarily think of it as something that's critical. But if Judge Joe doesn't have it, then that might be kind of a bummer. Oh man, finding Umaro, hanging out, training.
Not what you want to see there at Mount Cults. I mean, not who you want to see ever, but especially now at this point with 8 espers here.
You're on thin ice, mister.
Meanwhile, Honeydew did grab Go Mode, and as you mentioned, Kefka Tower skip. So as soon as he unburrows this castle, he'll be able to drop in at the statues here. So he's going to overtake Judge Joe when he gets into Kefka's Tower. Papa Shango going to get the bad news that it's just a pair of pumped up kicks from Goddess. And Double Down is making the walk up to World of Ruin Narsh. I don't think they did Tritalk, but there's 2 checks up here, so there's 2 possibilities at him getting an Esper.
Yeah, I think Double Down has not done that yet. He won't be too happy to see the dead check at the top of the cliff, but is going to go through and we'll get a little bit of new information to see what is at the Yeti spot. Thankfully, that one is also kind of peekable. You can see it in the cave opening in World of Balance Narsh, but also when you get up to the stone carving, or skull carving, or whatever that thing is that he's got in his room, you can touch it and see what you're going to get from it before committing to fighting the boss.
Yeah, we did not see a character peek out of the Yeti hole when we did Mog's checks, right? So that means that it is going to be either Esper item, and I hope for Double Down's sanity that it's an Esper. Meanwhile, Honeydew dropping into Kefka's Tower just ahead of Judge Joe here on the statues, and I did see that Papa Shango used the warp spell to get out of the top of Narsh. So warp is definitely on an Esper somewhere floating around. It just is a matter of, did Judge Joe pick that particular Esper up, and did he learn that particular spell?
Yeah. There's been a lot of the same pathway being made by our runners, so there's a pretty decent shot that Judge Joe has found a lot of the same Espers that Papa Shango has, so let's cross our fingers that he's not going to figure this out at the end and be quite disappointed.
Yeah, I definitely think that the only Esper differences I think between Judge Joe and the rest of the crew here are Judge Joe went all the way through Edgar's checks, and I believe he's the only one that has done it, because Honeydew short-circuited it out after the first one was his Go Mode Esper. We'll see if Papa Shango goes all the way through, because he needs 2 more, right? So
yeah, so this could give him his Go Mode as well.
Meanwhile, we got a dabbing Yeti here for Honeydew. So if you got him in the chat, you know what to do.
He's eating his greens. His recovery went up.
Oh no, it's an item!
Dang! Ah!
Holy cow.
Poor Double Down.
So this is why, Muggles of all ages, we introduced a check skip in Ultras League.
Because this kind of sucks.
Yeah, it's pretty...
Thankfully, Double Down's
it's
making
pretty
the right choice
infuriating.
here. And I know I harp on this a lot when I end up commentating, but it's not like Double Down made a bad call, right? It wasn't a poor strategy. He didn't pick a bad check. He picked a pretty good one, considering he knew that there wasn't anything in the Yeti Cave from the World of Balance. He knew he had a really good shot of getting 1 Esper amongst those 2 checks, but unfortunately, luck did not favor him.
Yep.
That's right. You can't fight dead checks with 6 Illuminas.
Papa Shango, meanwhile, is short-circuiting out. Did I miscount how many things he's got? Let's see. Can I pull up his tracker here?
Ooh.
Let's go. 6 and
Get
8.
it live.
No.
6 and 8.
So yeah, he still has 8 espers.
Yeah, didn't want to walk all the way down there. Don't necessarily blame him for that, but we'll cross our fingers that he makes the right choice.
Oh, he's gonna buy his last esper.
Dead Thief. Okay. Actually, dude, yeah, I agree with that. That's objectively less time used up than walking all the way down to the basement. Unfortunately, he's gonna have to sell a whole mess of stuff to get up there. Looks like he has the stuff to sell, though.
Oh yeah.
That was kind of an interesting benefit, like an interesting buff for this flag set that I did not think about until a couple of practices in. Starting with a full set of tools means that you also start with those available as bartering items, you know? If you don't think you're going to use a debilitator, which there's
no one should ever use a debilitator.
There was one really cool thing that a new player brought up in the Discord, which you can find on ff6worldscollide.com. Come on in and chat with us. They got to Final Kefka, I think, and just were struggling to put out damage, so they used a debilitator on him, made him weak to ice, and then just cracked like 10 ice rods on him to kill, and it was actually like it's an outside plan, but
yeah, it's a real Hail Mary strategy.
Yeah.
Most of the time, the debilitator, because it picks between the 8 different elements that you can make a boss weak to, will give you something like the 5 elements that you don't really have a lot of. Pearl.
Yeah, wind and water come up a lot.
Wind, poison, and what's the other one I'm thinking of? Earth. Yeah. So you basically don't have any of those spells most of the time, right? So 5 out of the 8 times the debilitator is useless.
Yep.
In other words. So that to me is debilitator's always an instant sell for me.
It is definitely not a good. I just wanted to shout out that
for sure.
thing because they were pretty hype about it, and honestly, I was too. That sounds sick.
All right.
I bet it felt great.
So Papa Shango did have at least 12 bosses. I messed up their count there. Double Down is rightfully leaving the Yeti on the airship here, hopping into Kefka's tower. And Honeydew, meanwhile, is one boss away, either one boss away or he now has Final Kefka unlock. Yeah, he's going to step on the switches here. First runner to do so.
Very interesting that Honeydew managed to get here first. They're the only one out of these 3 that did not buy a clutch of eggs at the beginning of the seed. And I don't think really went too nuts with Illuminas either. We're somewhat more standard loadout from Honeydew, but just good plays and a little bit of luck got them up into Final Kefka before everybody else.
Well, we'll see if that level disadvantage comes back here because, we can have our other runners who their levels for their characters are in the 40s. We'll see if they catch up to Honeydew here. The more levels you have, the more damage you can output.
Yeah, I think Honeydew might have a little bit of trouble on maybe tier 2, possibly tier 3, but I think 1 and 4, as long as Honeydew can get to the top shelf of the Kefka fight before everybody else, I think they've got it in the bag.
All right, so we start out with tier 1, the armor check of Final Kefka. We want to kill the face first. We'll death counter with Quake if it's left alive at the end. Let's instant death the long arm there. Sounds like a plan for the air anchor. And then the balled up fist is up after that.
Yeah, this is, I think I've heard you describe this. This is the armor check of the final boss. This is mostly just physical attacks. There's a shockwave that long arm can do, but he's going to be gone soon. And the face, as you said, will have a counter with a quake if it's the last one to die in this batch. But in general, the thing you're going to be worried about are the counter attacks from the short balled up fist, which Honeydew is completely negating with the Phantom Esper. Very good call.
Yeah, very good usage of Phantom here. One of the many tiers. You could basically use Phantom on any of the 3 tiers with varying degrees of success, but this tier I think it is the most helpful with, unfortunately.
Except for this, I completely forgot about Dread.
Yeah, there are only 2 spells besides that aforementioned Quake that the face can cast that goes through the Vanish status. One of them is that Dread for petrifying, and the other is the worst R Polarity, because that's an AoE. So it clears out the Phantom Fader status on all of your characters, and ruh-roh!
Okay.
Celeste might not make it. Oh my goodness! Oh no! Mog is down!
The extra counterattack takes out Mog.
That balled up fist. Oh no. So is Honeydew going to reset, or is he going to keep going? It looks like he's going to keep going. Meanwhile, Judge Joe stepping on the switches. About a minute and a half afterwards? No, it was more like 2. I don't know. We'd have to go back and check the tape, and I can't be bothered to right now because I'm very, very into this race at the moment.
Oh yeah, this is exciting. That is a pretty big loss on Honeydew's side. That Mog, while maybe not the biggest damage dealer out of everybody in, it's the only way to do multi-target damage, and that can be very helpful on tier 2 here, since there's 4. You saw there with Cyan's regular attack, there are 4 targets on this phase.
Yep, thankfully we do have Air Anchor for instant death. I don't know if we have Mute. Remember, Siren was the Esper down in the ancient castle, and I believe Judge Joe is the only one that went all the way down there to go get it.
That is correct. Yeah, wow, that's 2 huge benefits. They got Berserk early, and they're going to be I think, the only one access to Mute. I don't remember seeing it on anybody else.
Yeah, so with this tier, we want instant death for tools, we want Mute for magic, we want... Oh, no. Oh, no. We want Tiger to now do S-Cross, please. So Tiger will do nasty things like inflict the freeze status on your entire party, turn your character into a zombie, or do some really bad AoE attacks. So we're hoping for an S-Cross here for the sake of Honeydew. And then the last item up for bid in tier 2 is that blue guy named Hit. He will death counter with 10 hits, and he just does physical attacks. So he's normally not a problem unless he dies at the same time that some of these other parts do that have death counters, like Quarter from Magic. So we'll see what happens. And here comes the Fire 3. Thank you very much, Magic. Appreciate it. Yeah, the only way to get out of that freeze status is to inflict fire on your entire team. So that was the only way he can get out of this. Meanwhile, Judge Joe's lock has 29 HP, so he almost lost another character on the transition from tier 1 to tier 2. And normally in the vanilla game, that's not really a problem, right? Turdsman, you just sub someone in off the bench. But in Worlds Collide, we have our 4 characters, and that's it. We haven't been really making use of the other bench warmers, or the meat shields, if you will.
Yeah, in general, you usually don't have time to build up a backup character. Usually it's just the 4 that you pick at some point in the run where you feel confident with them. Which is why, Honeydew, losing that character early on was a huge pain, especially with the utility that Mog has. But still a ton of physical offense, and I really should stop talking about the poor guy because he keeps getting crossed. But okay, that didn't happen that time.
Yeah. So luckily, also Celeste is the one with Fenrir, so we have to make sure that she makes it onto tier 3 for reasons we'll talk about later. Meanwhile, Judge Joe's Mog is just throwing out quasars to the tune of 6,000 damage per pop. So making quick work of the second tier, so he may catch up here. And speaking of catching up, double down onto tier number 2 as well. Oh my goodness, and Papa Shango's Valiant Knife Offering user lock has 3,100 HP, but is still doing 12,000 damage a turn.
Oh yeah, you can really juice it up. I think there was an HP plus 50% Esper that was found pretty early on, so I'm gonna guess Locke probably has around 6k. Getting huge benefits.
Oh wow,
out of
that's
that.
even more damage than I thought he was doing. So that's what, that's 2,800 damage a turn. 28,000, sorry. Forgot, I dropped the 0 there.
All right, Honeydew heading up into Tier 3. This one is going to be scary. Like you said, thankfully Celeste does have Fenrir, which is going to be key in blocking that front. There's two parts to this one, and that front bit, when it dies, it uses an attack called Calmness, which is a physical attack that does not do any damage, but it does set a character's HP to 0. Standard resistances to instant death don't do anything to it. The only thing you can do is just not get hit by it. And the best ways of doing that are Fenrir and Golem. Having multiple characters with 2 Illuminas is a really good backup plan, though.
Oh, yeah. So, if you have lots of physical evade, we did fix the evade bug in Worlds Collide. So if you have a lot of physical evade, since it is a physical special attack and not a magic attack, that will help out. That's why things like safety bits and memento rings won't help with Calmness, because those things will block instant death magic attacks versus instant death physical attacks. And magic being rude for Papa Shango casting life 3 on themselves. Hate when
that's
happens.
An irritating one to find. Yeah, that one and Haste 2 are both real nasty on this fight. As Judge Joe heads up into Tier 3 after Honeydew, we'll see... Celeste was frozen on the way up. Gonna have to... Does that also have the effect? I know that there's a exploit with Morph that you can utilize, but...
Yeah, so if your character's status in the transition between Tier 2 and Tier 3, or any tiers rather, would have cleared, and it didn't because of the way just the tier transition happens, you'll be permanently in that status. So we'd use that for the permamorph glitch, but you could also be the victim of it in things like freeze or stop or sleep, right? So those are the problem statuses going from Tier 2 to Tier 3 here. As Honeydew did counter the Calmness there with Fenrir appropriately and is heading on to Tier number 4 against Final Kefka, while Judge Joe procs the train counterattack. So that's one of the counterattacks from the last part of this boss that we don't want to see. Double Down here does not have Fenrir, is using Phantom instead to try to get around Calmness. It's a bit risky because if this doesn't do 10,000 damage, he will eat a Meteo on his team. And oh boy.
Ooh, didn't quite, but thankfully had a second one. Oh, he used that way earlier than I thought. Oh,
yeah,
no.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Judge Joe does get past the Meteo phases and is on to Tier 4. Honeydew up against Kefka here, who will counter with Fallen 1 on his first turn. That's why we got a Mega Elixir handy from that Magi Master fight. We'll start to counter attack when he's under 30,000 HP with things like Hyperdrive and Havoc Wing. When he's under 10,000 HP, he may counter with Ultima, which is not going to be a problem for Edgar, but probably will for Celeste and Cyan here. He does, however, stop his counterattacks when doing this phase of the fight, when he charges up for this ability called Goner. So that's when we tend to throw all of our stuff out at the boss, like the shields, like the quad Atma weapons here, and we'll see if that's enough to do it for Honeydew, as time is on the first flash, and there it is!
There it is.
Honeydew there, 1:16:33 official time for them.
Refusing to be taken down at the last minute by just rotten luck. Just pushing through and taking care of Final Kefka. 1:16:33, very good time.
Meanwhile, Judge Joe queuing up the Mega Elixir here from that Fallen 1. Double Down getting on to Tier 4 as well. Papa Shango's lock doing so much damage with that Valiant Ninth Offering. So will he have enough time to catch up to surpass some of these runners here? As the Fallen 1 phase got skipped for Double Down because he did enough damage to push him under that 30,000 HP threshold. So out comes the damage for them. Judge Joe here doing a little bit of status clearing from that train on Tier 3. And Double Down comes and leapfrogs over Judge Joe. 1:17:23 is his time. So very nicely done.
Papa Shango might still be able to get ahead. His lock is doing huge amounts of damage, but Judge Joe, I think, might have had a little bit too much of a head start. We'll see if this is it. That is the flash, and Judge Joe getting in at 117.41.
Yeah, Papa Shang. Oh, look at that damage. Jeez.
That's so good.
Phil Swift. That's a lot of damage.
Yeah. It's like vanilla.
Yeah, 117.57 it is for Papa Shango. Wow. Just so much damage that his lock did. Unfortunately, not able to catch up with some of our other runners, but since this is a battle royale, the top 20 times move on, and these runners were 11 through 15 respectively. I was sort of in the middle there at number 12, but I had raced this previously against a couple of other runners, so we decided to showcase some of our runners that maybe we haven't seen yet in the Flashback Battle Royale. I think this is the first time on air for most of these runners on stream here.
Yeah, I think for this event. And that's always a nice... There's so many... we were talking a little bit in the green room ahead of time. There's so many, good heats in this event. There's so many little groups that are all kind of fighting each other for the top spot in their particular little chunk. And this was a really good one for this particular chunk. We got multiple characters or multiple players that were less than 20 seconds apart from each other. We're seeing Double Down taking a good look at his works. 133 magic power on Mog. That explains a lot.
510 battle power Celeste with 93 strength. Ridiculous. So some of that was the stat bonuses that we padded right from the Coliseum.
Yeah.
But some of that is just, the stat bonuses that we got on our runners. So Tursman, let's talk about next week.
All right.
So
yeah, I'm less of a hater of Zozo than I think a lot of other people are.
Yeah, it's weird because I'm not a huge fan of this flag set. It's sneakily very difficult, and we'll go over that in just a second here. Did you play in the Battlegrounds event when it was live as well?
I did. Let's go Returners.
Yes, I was also part of the Returners team, which was very cool because I think we put a nice W on that whole event as well.
Oh, yeah, we beat the crap out of them.
We did pretty well. I think that was a really fun event because we sort of did player knowledge share where some people would run practice seeds and say, oh, hey, by the way, look out for this when you're doing your actual, event and things like that. So I really liked the camaraderie that this particular event had for our runners in particular. Did you kind of feel the same way?
Oh yeah, it was really good for collaboration. A fantastic event for just sometimes you might need a little bit of push to break out of the shell and just actually chat with the other people in the community, and this was perfect for that. And just in general, the event itself was just so creative. It was essentially kind of like a big risk board. And each zone had its own specific flag set, and we were all kind of jockeying for control over all the different little zones. It was really cool.
Yeah, so for those that are interested in playing the Seed of the Week, it will be the Vector Battlegrounds Arena.
Oh, hey.
Which is pretty cool, because I don't think we did Vector, right? Because Vector was... Oh, no, I'm sorry, we did do Vector.
I think we did it once, yeah.
Yes, this was the round that we had finally won, right? Because Vector was the capital of the empire, so this was the final week in which we did win. My favorite, I think, flag set in this event was Triangle Island, because I thought it was cool that if you found a character, you got some buff in some way, shape, or form. Right, if you recruited, let's say, Gao, you got 255 rages, right? If you got Celeste, you got the Magitech upgrade, stuff like that. So I thought I thought that was pretty neat. I don't know if you remember any of the other flag sets that were not Zozo.
Kind of vaguely. Zozo sticks out pretty considerably. As you can kind of see with these, the red the red text here. Ability scaling being random is pretty rough.
Yeah.
5% of the chests having random monsters in it. Item selling for 0. I think I've done 3 practice Zozo seeds, and I have forgotten about that every single time.
Yeah.
So really looking forward to never learning that lesson. But most importantly, the character names and sprites being shuffled. This is going to require a little bit of foreknowledge. There is a little text file that comes with these when you download a seed, and you're probably going to want to pop that open to double check who is going to be who, because Cyan might not look like Cyan. It might look like Edgar. It might look like Terra.
Yeah. So basically, if you're looking at the seed, the characters up to the left of the arrow in the graphics section are the actual characters, and the ones on the right are their sprite swaps. So if you see Terra, Arrow, Locke, that means that if you see Locke on the screen, that's actually Terra, and that unlocks Terra's checks. The thing is, you have to remember this, but also forget it when it comes time to set your final party, because you need to remember the character sprites for your lineup. So I usually start chanting my my final party before I go to set their characters. So it definitely helps to have an auto tracker in this particular flag set, but you can get around that if you use the in-game track menu, and if you go under checks, it'll tell you which ones you can go to. So that's an easy way to do that. As I mentioned, this is a sneakily very difficult flag set, and some of the things you had mentioned, random ability scaling. So in Worlds Collide, we sort of scale the abilities of the bosses based on their vanilla elements in most standard flag sets, meaning that Flame Eater that we saw in Engine Room will cast fire spells, basically, right? With ability scaling set to random, that's not the case. They could cast other types of spells, including non-elemental spells, which are things like Ultima, Medio, ridiculous spells like that at higher levels, or things that you normally never see and don't have resistances for. Things like Quake that we saw on the final boss, right? That's an earth spell. So you have to sort of be careful, and you have to know that, hey, at any point, this fight can turn sour very, very quickly.
It's much more important to have a sort of wider selection of defenses than otherwise would be. With the vanilla bosses, you kind of know how many of them are going to have fire stuff, how many of them are going to have lightning stuff. But with random ability scaling, you can't quite tell. And you mentioned I think the non-elemental ones are some of the scariest. Because at high levels, you're running into Ultima, you're running into Meteor, you're running into Goner, but even at low levels, you're running into Stone, you're running into Blowfish,
Flare.
You're running into all sorts of weird moves that you don't normally see that
Heartburn.
Really trip you up. Heartburn? Yeah.
And then on top of that, the normalize and distort boss stats flag is also makes kind of a back-breaking effort out of, tier 3 in particular of the final boss.
In general, it just can really sort of smooth out pre-game knowledge for a lot of the runners. It's still helpful to know if this boss is a magic-y boss or if this boss is a punchy boss, but you're not going to be able to really laser in on what all their stats are going to be or what kind of moves they're going to use.
Yeah, and then the other thing was the item selling for 0 GP. So I think in this flag set, I'm going to definitely loot a bit more than shop, because the shops are not all that great. But chests, while they're 100% random, 5% of the time they will be a random encounter. So what I usually do in these sort of trap chest type of seeds is I like to save outside of every town before I go in and start looting, because you might run into a fight, like a level magic fight, that just does an AoE spell to open and you're dead, and you've just lost all that progress, right? So make sure you're saving often and you're equipping your characters before you start opening chests. Normally we tell runners stay out of the menu as often as possible, but that might come back to bite you in the butt here.
Oh yeah, menu boss is going to be brutal for the Zozo flag set.
Additionally, we start with only 2 characters instead of 3, and we need to get to 7 of them to unlock Final Kefka, as well as setting the Zozo clock. So we did see some of that in our runs here, but for anybody that doesn't know how to set the Zozo clock, I did I don't want to call it wonderful, I did a tutorial of it on our YouTube channel, FF6 Worlds Collide on YouTube. There's also a text version of it in our wiki under our guides on ff6worldscollide.com. The other interesting thing, Turdsman, that kind of I think also gets overlooked is the equipable items. They get shuffled plus 15% random. So normally we're kind of used to saying, oh, I found an Illumina in a shop and I have Edgar in my party, let's say, in this flag set. Oh, that's done. I know what his build is. In Zozo, your Edgar might not actually be able to wear that Illumina. He might instead get Gao's equipable item pool, let's just say, right? Which is not nearly as good as Edgar's. So that is something to be careful of, and make sure you know who can wear what piece of equipment.
It's very I didn't know that, so that's very.
You're
very
welcome.
Important
You're welcome for that tip.
Things ahead of time, because I completely looked over that one. That is huge.
Yeah, because you might assume, oh, I found a Valiant Knife and I have Locke in my party, even though Locke looks like, oh, I don't know, Strago, right? But that Strago masquerading as Locke, maybe not with the Valiant Knife. So it's very, very interesting here. So sneakily, kind of a difficult flag set, which is interesting because I think this particular seed for the chainsaw was relatively easy, I would say, with the amount of fun things we found in shops. The memory lane seed was not nearly as fun from when I looked at it and when I played it. But this one is going to be a little bit more interesting, I think, for us to look at.
The scaling, it won't be as bad. So, and only having 2 starting characters means that the monsters you're going to run into at the beginning are going to be like level 6, like 5 to 7, I think.
Right.
So if you have a decent ability that can do, a bit of damage, you can use a flash, you can use slot. Taking a bunch of grind fights early on might be a good way to get a bunch of money, get some extra levels. Just try to keep as far ahead of the curve as you can be, so that you don't run into something gnarly with the ability scaling or the normalize and distort.
Yeah, so that's what we got to look forward to this upcoming week for the Flashback Battle Royale. Turdsman, you got any other final thoughts before we get the heck out of here?
No, just to plug the Discord again. There's a link on our website, Final Fantasy 6 or ff6worldscollide.com. You can use that to check out the wiki with the fantastic guide that Schwantz was talking about earlier that he made. It's fantastic. Everybody knows it. And you can also find links to the Discord there and our web seed roller if you want to just go ahead and play some games for yourself.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Turdsman, for hopping in the commentary booth sort of last minute with me to do this sort of vodcast of our runners from the last time. This was a lot of fun to watch back different routes than I took. I took a wildly different approach to the seed, but it's always fun to see people actually set the Zozo clock. I'm very, very much surprised by that. Yeah,
I didn't really think about it too much on last week's. I mean, obviously with this one you have to.
Yeah. So I would suggest coupling in setting the Zozo clock with either Terra's Zozo tower check or Cyan's Mount Zozo check, because then one, you'll already be here, and especially in the case of the Zozo tower check, you already have to walk past that conga line anyway, right? So you might as well. All right.
Yeah, all right.
So thank you guys and girls and Moogles so much in the chat. We really appreciate that. And I'm going to send a raid off to somebody as we head out of here, and we'll catch you next time. Peace out, everybody.
Have a good night.